Twilight didn't arrive in Nightville like it did in human cities. It didn't soften the edges of buildings or paint the sky in warm gold. Here, dusk fell like a verdict, violet light bleeding through permanent storm clouds, black towers slicing the horizon, enchanted lanterns humming as if the whole kingdom held its breath. Inside the obsidian castle, the air was colder than the streets outside, not because of weather, but because of him. King Cale Ravener sat alone in his private office, high above the city, where even the bravest nobles rarely dared to enter without permission. He didn't need guards at his door. The castle itself obeyed him. The stone listened. The shadows watched. On his desk, reports were stacked like gravestones. Rebellion whispers from the eastern quarter, famine complaints from the lower city, noble petitions demanding harsher labor laws, and a sealed scroll from the Vampire Council, an invitation disguised as a warning. Cale read without blinking. His crimson eyes moved across ink like a blade gliding across silk. He had ruled for a century without love, without softness, and without mercy. That was why everyone feared him. And that was why, when the door opened without announcement, the entire castle seemed to pause, like even the walls weren't sure what to do next. A small figure stepped inside. Not a soldier. Not a noble. A child. She couldn't have been more than 6. Her golden curls were messy, as if she'd fought the wind all the way up the mountain. An oversized maid's apron hung off her tiny shoulders like a cloak borrowed from someone braver. The hem dragged across the polished floor, and her boots, scuffed, too big and laced wrong, left faint dust marks on stone that servants normally cleaned until it shone like black glass. In one hand she held a folded linen cloth. In the other, a bundle of fresh lavender tied with twine. Cale's pen stopped mid-scratch. For the first time in years, silence in his office wasn't controlled. It was stunned. The little girl looked up at him with eyes too steady for someone so small, honey brown, wide, and serious in a way that didn't belong to childhood. "Excuse me, Your Majesty," she said, her voice trembling only at the very end, as if bravery was something she was forcing her throat to obey. "I came to work for my mommy today." Cale didn't move. His gaze sharpened, instinctively scanning for illusion magic, trick sigils, hidden curses. Assassins didn't send children, unless they wanted to be remembered. But the girl's hands were shaking, not with deception. With effort. With fear. With determination. She couldn't get out of bed, the girl continued quickly, as if rushing would stop her courage from collapsing. "She's really sick. But she said if she misses work again we might lose our home. So I came instead. I know what she does. She showed me." Cale rose slowly from his chair. He had stood before armies without hesitation, but now he was careful, like sudden movement might shatter this strange, impossible moment. "What is your name?" he asked. "Arya," she answered. Then, as if she feared she'd forgotten something important, she added, "My mommy is Vivian. Vivian Solon. She works here." Cale's eyes narrowed, not with anger but with a sharp, unfamiliar pull deep in his chest. He recognized the name. Not because it mattered to him, servants rarely did, but because he had heard it in the way nobles complained. "That maid is too quiet. That woman won't flatter the lords. She looks at the floor like she's hiding a crime. And the strangest complaint of all, she smells like lavender and old prayers." Cale stepped down from his desk platform, boots silent on the stone. "How did you get into my office?" he asked, voice low. Arya looked down at her boots. "I walked," she admitted. Cale's jaw tightened. "You walked, through Nightville alone?" Arya nodded, swallowing. "Mommy showed me the path once. She said the streets with fewer monsters are safer. And the guards at the lower gate, they didn't stop me when I said I had work. They thought I was a tiny maid." Her cheeks flushed at the last part, but she lifted her chin again like a soldier finishing a report. "I didn't mean to be rude. I just had to come." Cale stared at her as if she'd confessed to walking into a storm holding nothing but a candle. Because she had. Nightville was not a kingdom for children. It was a vampire capital built on ancient laws and older fear. Even humans who lived there survived by staying invisible. Yet this little girl had crossed the lower city alone, climbed endless obsidian stairs, passed enchanted wards that should have burned her skin with warning, and walked straight into the heart of the most feared vampire's fortress. Not to steal. Not to beg. Not to cry. But to protect her mother. Cale's throat felt tight. He hadn't felt anything like that in decades. "Your mother," he said carefully, "is gravely ill?" Arya nodded hard, eyes shining now despite her bravery. "She was shaking," Arya whispered, "and coughing dark stuff. I gave her water. I covered her with blankets. I tried to make soup but I burned it." Her voice broke on that last word and she blinked quickly, fast like she'd learned that tears cost too much time. She told me to stay home, Arya rushed on. But I remembered what she said. She said if she misses work again the landlord will throw us out and then we'll be in the street. So I came. Cale's gaze dropped to the lavender bundle in her hand. Why lavender? He asked. Arya held it up. It helps, she said simply. Mommy says lavender helps the heart feel less scared. For a moment Cale couldn't speak. Because he remembered something, an old memory buried under centuries of blood and law. Lavender. A scent from a night long ago when he was not yet king, when he was only a prince trying to survive a palace that had taught him love was weakness. And in that memory someone had placed lavender on a wound that should have killed him. Someone with gentle hands. Someone human. Someone he had never been able to find again. Cale's fingers curled slightly at his side, controlled, but the air in the room shifted, subtle pressure as if the castle itself sensed its king's heartbeat changing. A servant bell chimed softly in the corner. Your Majesty, a voice echoed through the enchantment, hesitant. The council convenes in 10 minutes. Cale didn't take his eyes off Arya. Cancel it, he said. Silence. My lord, all of it? The evening's agenda? Cale's voice sharpened with cold command. Postpone everything. Yes, my lord. The magic faded. Arya stared wide-eyed. You cancelled important grown-up things? She asked, half shocked, half worried she'd caused trouble. Cale walked to a carved cabinet of blackwood and opened it. He didn't call servants. He didn't ask permission from tradition. He simply reached for a silver tray and placed bread, butter, and a small cup of warm honey tea on it. Then he knelt so his eyes were level with hers. Cale Ravener had made generals kneel. He had never knelt for anyone. Are you hungry? He asked. Arya hesitated like she didn't know if she was allowed. Then she whispered, Do you have bread? Cale held the tray out. I do. Arya took the tea with both hands the way children held precious things. Her fingers trembled as she sipped, eyes closing for 1 second like the warmth was permission to finally breathe. Thank you, she whispered. Cale watched her sit on a velvet bench near the arched window, legs swinging above the floor. The city sprawled beneath them, dark rooftops, violet streetlights, smoke curling from the lower districts where humans lived packed together like forgotten pages in a book no one read. She looked too small for this world. And yet she had walked into his. Cale turned away before she could see the storm in his expression. He didn't understand what was happening, only that it was not random. A child did not cross Nightvan alone and survive by coincidence. And the castle wards did not fail unless something deeper allowed it. Something ancient. Something tied to fate. Cale lifted his hand and pressed a sigil embedded in the underside of his desk. Within seconds the head steward arrived. A sharp-eyed woman named Celeste, with iron-gray hair and the posture of someone who never forgot a rule. She stopped when she saw Arya. Shock flickered across her face before she forced it into calm. My lord. Cale's voice turned quiet, dangerous in its control. This child is to be supervised, he said. Federal kept warm. And under no circumstances is she to return to the lower city alone. Celeste bowed quickly. Yes, your majesty. Cale continued, each word a command that would reshape a servant's entire world. Send a healer to Vivian Solin's residence immediately. And send guards, discreet ones. No armored parade. If anyone asks, they are patrolling. Celeste's eyes widened. My lord, Vivian Solin is only a laundress. Is this necessary? Cale's gaze snapped to her like a blade catching moonlight. It is necessary because I said so. Celeste bowed lower. As you command. She approached Arya with gentleness that looked almost forced, like kindness was a language she didn't often use. Come, little one, Celeste said softly. We'll get you something warmer than that apron. And perhaps, a sweet roll. Arya glanced at Cale as if asking permission without words. Cale gave a single nod. Arya stood, clutching her lavender. Then before leaving she surprised everyone. She turned back and walked up to Cale, reaching up on her toes. Cale stiffened. No one touched him without dying for it. But Arya simply held the lavender out. For you, she said. So your heart feels less scared too. Cale froze. Because for a second, just one, he didn't feel like a king. He felt like someone who had been seen. He took the lavender slowly as if accepting it might break a law older than his crown. Arya smiled, a small, tired smile that didn't belong in a castle like this. Then she left with Celeste, her tiny footsteps fading down the corridor. Cale stood alone again. But the room was different. He looked at the lavender in his hand and something inside him, something long sealed behind cruelty and duty, stirred awake. He turned sharply to the window and stared at the lower city. Somewhere down there, a young mother lay coughing darkness into a cloth, too poor to buy medicine, too proud to beg, too exhausted to keep fighting. Vivian Solon. Cale didn't know her story. Not yet. But he knew this. A mother did not raise a child like Arya without paying for it in pain. And now that pain had walked into his throne room and placed lavender in his palm. Cale's fingers tightened around the bundle. Find her, he murmured to the shadows, voice barely audible, but the castle heard him anyway. Find Vivian Solon. Outside, thunder rolled over Nightvan. And deep within the obsidian castle, ancient magic that had been silent for a century began to move, slowly, like a sleeping beast opening one eye. Because somewhere in the lower city, the past was about to return. And the vampire king, who had sworn he would never care again, had just been chosen by a little girl's love. The mother who vanished. Vivian Solon woke with her lungs on fire. For a moment she didn't know where she was. The ceiling above her was not the cracked wood of their rented room. It wasn't the stained fabric she'd patched with thread so many times it had become more stitched than cloth. This ceiling was smooth, dark, almost glossy, etched with silver runes that pulsed faintly like a heartbeat. Panic snapped through her body. She tried to sit up and pain ripped through her ribs so sharply she gasped and collapsed back down. A warm hand pressed gently to her shoulder. Easy, a woman's voice said. Come. Professional. Don't fight it. You've been sick for days. Vivian's eyes darted. A healer stood beside the bed, an older vampire woman with kind eyes and hair braided tight like a crown. Behind her, 2 guards waited near the door, their armor matte black, their faces hidden behind shadows. Vivian's throat went dry. Where is my daughter? She rasped, voice shredded. Arya, where is Arya? The healer's expression softened. She's safe, the healer said. She's warm, fed, and being cared for inside the castle. Vivian's blood turned to ice. No, she whispered, trying again to sit up. No, she can't be there. You don't understand. She's human. Bill. She walked into the king's private office. The healer interrupted gently. And the king ordered that she be protected. Vivian stopped breathing. Her eyes widened with the kind of fear that didn't belong to sickness. Cale? She whispered before she could stop herself. The healer blinked. You know His Majesty's name. Vivian's lips trembled. The room tilted. She gripped the blanket like it was the only solid thing in existence. I can't be here, Vivian said hoarsely. Please take me home. I'll work even like this. Just don't keep me here. The healer studied her for a long moment, then sighed like she'd already guessed. You're not here as a prisoner, Vivian Solon, she said. You're here because your illness is unnatural. Vivian swallowed hard. What do you mean? The healer pulled a cloth from a silver bowl and dabbed Vivian's forehead. The cloth came away smeared with something darker than blood, like ink. You have been coughing shadow, the healer said quietly. Human bodies do not produce this. Something has been inside you. Feeding. Twisting. Vivian's hands began to shake. No, she whispered. Not again. The healer's eyes sharpened. Again? Vivian closed her eyes. Her chest rose and fell in shallow, painful breaths. A memory tried to claw its way out of her mind. An old corridor, violet lanterns, screaming, and a boy bleeding on cold stone. She forced it down. I don't know what you're talking about, Vivian lied, even though her voice broke on the last word. The healer didn't push. Instead, she stood and turned toward the guards. Inform His Majesty she's awake, the healer said. And keep this room sealed. No servants. No nobles. No gossip. One guard bowed and vanished silently. Vivian's heart hammered so hard she thought it would burst. Cale Ravener. The vampire king. The man whose name made entire districts go quiet. The man she had once seen, before he became a monster to the world. And now Arya was in his castle. Vivian forced herself upright, inch by inch, ignoring the pain. I need to see her, she whispered. Please. Let me see my daughter. The healer hesitated, then nodded once. You will, she promised. But first, you need to live long enough to hold her. Vivian's eyes burned with tears she refused to let fall. Because she had promised Arya something long ago. I'll never leave you. No matter what. And Vivian Solon did not break promises. On the other side of the castle, Arya sat in a bath the size of a small pond. Steam curled around her golden curls and rose-scented soap bubbles clung to her shoulders like soft clouds. She looked smaller than ever in the enormous marble tub, but she was clean now, clean in a way she hadn't been for a long time. Not because Vivian didn't try, but because water cost coins and coins were always needed for food. A maid, young human, knelt beside the tub, washing Arya's hair with hands that shook from fear. Arya noticed. "It's okay," Arya said softly. The maid blinked at her. "You're not scared?" the maid whispered. Arya shrugged. "I was scared walking here," she admitted. "But, the king gave me bread." The maid stared like Arya had said the moon gave her a hug. "His Majesty doesn't give anyone bread," the maid whispered. Arya frowned, thinking seriously. "Maybe he was hungry too," Arya said. The maid's eyes filled with tears and she quickly looked away. Arya didn't understand why grown-ups cried so much when children said simple things. After the bath, Celeste dressed Arya in a warm velvet dress the color of midnight with a little silver ribbon at the waist. Arya kept trying to pull the fabric down because she felt like she was wearing someone else's life. "Are you sure I can wear this?" she asked. Celeste's mouth tightened, but her eyes softened. "The king ordered it," Celeste said. Arya looked up. "Is he mad at me?" she asked quietly. Celeste blinked. "Mad?" she repeated, almost laughing from disbelief. "No, little one. His Majesty hasn't been mad." Arya tilted her head. "Then why does everyone look like they're holding their breath?" Celeste didn't answer that. Because how could she explain that the castle had not seen its king cancel a council meeting in over 100 years? How could she explain that nobles were already whispering about a human child who walked into the obsidian office and didn't die? How could she explain that fear wasn't the only thing in the air now? It was something worse for a kingdom built on coldness. Oh. King Cale Ravener stood in a corridor outside the sealed medical chambers, staring at the door like it was a battlefield he couldn't conquer by force. He had faced warlords. He had crushed rebels. He had executed traitors without hesitation. But he hadn't expected this. He hadn't expected a child's lavender to still be in his hand hours later. He hadn't expected his chest to feel heavy. Not with hunger. Not with rage. With something disturbingly human. Celeste approached, careful not to make noise as if sound might offend him. "My lord," she said quietly. "The healer confirms Vivian Solon is awake." Cale's eyes narrowed. How close to death was she? Celeste hesitated. "Very," she admitted. Her lungs were failing. "The healer says it wasn't natural sickness." Cale's jaw tightened. Cale already suspected that. Nightvan had many illnesses, but shadow cough wasn't common in humans unless someone had cursed them. Unless someone wanted them silent. Cale turned slightly. "Where is the child?" "Warm," Celeste said. "Federal bathe. Dressed." Cale's gaze flicked to her. "She will not be touched by nobles." Celeste's throat moved. She nodded. "Of course, my lord." Cale took one step toward the medical door, then stopped. Because he could feel it. The pull. The whisper of old magic curling like smoke around the hallway. Something in Vivian Solon's presence made the castle remember. Cale had felt that only once before. When he was dying. And someone had saved him. A memory struck him so sharply he saw it like a blade in his mind. A human girl kneeling beside him, hands glowing faintly silver as she pressed them to his wound. Her voice whispering words he had never heard before, a language older than vampire law. A language that made the pain stop and the darkness retreat. Cale's hands clenched. That human had vanished before he woke. And every time he searched for her, the trail went cold. Because someone had erased her. Someone powerful enough to hide a human from a vampire prince. Cale's eyes darkened. There were only a few who could do that. And most of them sat on the vampire council. He pushed open the door. Vivian lay stiff on the bed, her face pale against the dark sheets, her hair damp with sweat. She looked younger than Cale expected, only in her late 20s, but her eyes were old. Too old. As soon as she saw him, she tried to sit up, panic flashing. "No, please," she choked. Arya didn't mean to, she was just trying to help me. Please don't punish her." Cale stopped. The guards behind him froze, waiting for orders. Cale raised one hand, dismissing them. They left immediately, closing the door. For the first time, Vivian Solon was alone with the Vampire King. Her whole body trembled. Cale watched her carefully. Not like prey. Not like a servant. Like a question. "Where is your daughter?" Cale asked. Vivian swallowed. She's alive," she whispered. "She is safe," Cale said. "And she is brave." Vivian's eyes filled. "She shouldn't be," Vivian whispered. "She shouldn't have to be brave. She's just a child." Cale's voice lowered. "Yet she crossed Nightvan alone and walked into my office to protect you. Vivian closed her eyes, tears spilling now despite her effort. I tried, she whispered. I tried so hard to keep her away from this city. But we had nowhere else to go. Cale took a step closer. What did you do, he asked quietly, that made you so afraid of being seen? Vivian's breath caught. I don't know what you mean. Cale's eyes flashed crimson. You carry a curse, he said. You cough shadow. That is not illness. That is punishment. Vivian's face went white. Cale leaned forward slightly, voice like a blade wrapped in silk. Who marked you, Vivian Solon? Vivian's lips trembled. I can't say. Cale's expression hardened. You can, he corrected. You have simply been made to believe you cannot. Vivian flinched as if struck. Cale watched her carefully. Then, softer, dangerously softer, he said, You saved a vampire once. Vivian froze. Her eyes snapped open, locking onto his. Cale's voice was almost a whisper. You saved me. Vivian's whole body went rigid. The air in the room changed like the castle leaned closer. Cale stared at her, his centuries-old calm fractured by something fierce and raw. I remember your hands, he said. I remember the lavender. I remember the language you spoke. Vivian's face crumpled, terror and grief colliding. You weren't supposed to remember, she whispered. Cale's eyes burned. Someone tried to erase you, he said. But they failed. Vivian's hands shook as she covered her mouth, as if holding back a scream. Cale stepped closer, stopping at the edge of the bed like a king approaching a confession. Vivian, he said, voice low and deadly, tell me why you vanished. Vivian stared at him for a long moment, then whispered the truth like it would kill her to let it out. Because the night I saved you. I was told if I ever spoke of it, they would kill me. Cale's jaw tightened. Who? Vivian's eyes filled again. The council, she whispered. They said you were not supposed to live. Silence slammed into the room. Cale's face went utterly still. For a heartbeat, Vivian thought he might explode, might rip the castle apart with rage. But instead, Cale did something far more terrifying. He smiled. Not with warmth. With promise. Then they have been lying to me for a century, Cale said softly. Vivian's breath shook. They'll kill you too, she whispered. They'll use Arya. Cale's eyes snapped to hers. They will not touch her, he said, voice like iron. Not while I exist. Vivian swallowed hard. And if you protect us, she whispered, what do you want from me? Cale's gaze dropped briefly to her hands. I want the truth, he said. And I want to know why your daughter walked past my wards as if the castle recognized her. Vivian blinked. I don't understand. Cale's voice turned quieter. Neither do I, he admitted, and the honesty in that single sentence shook Vivian more than his rage ever could. Cale turned toward the door. Rest, he ordered. You will see Arya soon. Vivian's voice broke. Wait, Cale. Cale paused stiff. Vivian swallowed, fear trembling in every word. Please, don't be kind to her if you're going to take her away, Vivian whispered. She's never had much. If you give her hope and then... Cale turned back slowly. His eyes were dark now, not crimson. Not predator. Something else. Vivian Solon, he said quietly, I do not give hope to humans. He stepped closer, lowering his voice like a vow. But your daughter gave it to me. Vivian stared, stunned. Cale straightened, coldness returning like armor. You will see her at dawn, he said. And until then, no one enters this room but the healer. He left. The door shut. Vivian collapsed back into the pillows, shaking. Because she understood one terrifying truth now. Arya hadn't just walked into a castle. She had awakened a king. Far below, in a hidden chamber carved beneath the council hall, 3 ancient vampires watched a mirror filled with violet mist. In the mist, an image flickered. Arya, small in her velvet dress, holding lavender close to her chest. One vampire hissed. That child shouldn't exist. Another's eyes gleamed. She exists because Vivian disobeyed. The third, oldest, cruelest, smiled. And now Cale knows. Silence. Then the oldest vampire spoke, voice smooth as poison. Prepare the blood trial. If the king has found his weakness, we will use it. The mirror mist darkened, swirling like a storm. And somewhere in the castle above, Arya looked up suddenly, as if she felt eyes on her. She hugged her lavender tighter. And whispered, Mommy, please be okay. Because dawn was coming. And with it, the first true test of the vampire king's protection. The child the castle recognized. Dawn crept over Nightvin like a hesitant confession. The violet lanterns lining the streets dimmed one by one, and the enchanted clouds above the city thinned just enough for pale silver light to touch the towers of the obsidian castle. It wasn't a sunrise the way humans knew it, there was no warmth, no gold, but for vampires, dawn was still a moment of truth. Magic shifted. Wards breathed. Old spells woke and decided whether to sleep again. Arya stood at a tall window, her forehead resting lightly against the cool glass. Below her, the city looked quieter than it had the night before, like a beast pretending to rest. She could see the rooftops Mommy always warned her about, the narrow streets she had memorized, the place where the bread seller once gave her a crust for free. She clutched the lavender tightly. "Mommy," she whispered, "I'm still being good." Behind her, Celeste watched in silence. She had served 3 kings in her lifetime. She had seen wars begin with smiles and end with screams. But she had never seen the castle behave like this. Since Arya arrived, doors had opened on their own. Servants reported feeling watched, not with threat but with attention. Ancient enchantments hummed softly instead of screaming warnings. Even the gargoyles perched on the outer towers had shifted, turning their stone faces inward, as if guarding something precious. As if guarding her. Celeste cleared her throat. "Little one," she said gently, "it's time." Arya turned, eyes bright but tired. "Can I see Mommy now?" Celeste nodded. "Yes." Arya didn't run. She didn't cry. She simply took a deep breath and held Celeste's hand, walking through corridors so vast they swallowed her footsteps. As they passed servants, whispers followed them like shadows. "That's her. The human child. The one who made the king cancel the council. The one the castle let in." Some vampires stared with open suspicion. Others with curiosity. A few, very few, looked afraid. Arya noticed none of it. She was focused on one thing. Her mother. Vivian Solon had not slept. She lay awake staring at the ceiling, every muscle tense, heart pounding every time footsteps passed outside her door. Her lungs burned less now, the shadow cough retreating under the healer's magic, but fear had replaced pain. "Kale knows." The thought repeated like a hammer. "He knows I saved him. He knows the council tried to kill him. He knows about the language. And worst of all, Arya is inside his castle." Vivian pressed her hand to her chest, fighting the urge to scream. She had spent 6 years hiding, keeping her head down, working until her hands cracked, swallowing humiliation so her daughter could eat. She had taught Arya which streets were safest, which guards might look away, how to be small enough not to be noticed. And in one night, all of it had unraveled. The door opened softly. "Mommy?" Vivian bolted upright. Arya flew into her arms, velvet dress and all, wrapping herself around Vivian's neck with fierce strength. "You're okay," Arya cried. "I told them you'd be okay." Vivian broke. She clutched her daughter, sobbing openly now, face buried in golden curls that smelled like rose soap and lavender. "I'm so sorry," Vivian whispered over and over. "I'm so sorry I let you go. I'm so sorry." Arya pulled back just enough to look at her. "I wasn't scared," Arya said seriously. "The king gave me bread." Vivian's breath hitched. Celeste stepped back quietly, closing the door partway to give them privacy. Vivian cupped Arya's face, examining her like she needed proof. "They didn't hurt you?" Vivian whispered. Arya shook her head. "They were nice," she said. "Some of them looked scared of me though." Vivian forced a smile, heart aching. "They shouldn't be," she said softly. But she knew better. Because Arya wasn't ordinary. She never had been. Vivian had known it from the night Arya was born, when the storm outside their room had gone silent, when the healer had gasped as silver light traced ancient runes across the infant's skin before fading away. Vivian had begged the healer to forget what she saw. And the healer had. At least, mostly. "Mommy," Arya whispered suddenly, leaning close. "The castle feels like it knows me." Vivian stiffened. "What do you mean?" Arya frowned, searching for words. "It's like when I walk it listens," she said. "Like when I talk to the old tree near our house and it doesn't drop branches on me." Vivian's blood ran cold. She hugged Arya tightly. "That's just imagination," she lied. But she felt it too. The magic in the air was reacting to Arya. And magic did not imagine. Cale Ravener stood on the balcony overlooking the inner courtyard, hands clasped behind his back. Below him, nobles gathered in small clusters, whispering like insects. The Vampire Council had arrived unannounced, an insult disguised as concern. Their black and crimson robes marked them as ancient, powerful, and utterly certain of their authority. Cale felt no fear. Only clarity. "They're early," Celeste said quietly behind him. "They're afraid," Kale replied. Celeste hesitated. My lord, if the council invokes a blood trial? Kale's voice cut like ice. Let them try. Celeste fell silent. Kale turned slightly. Has the child seen her mother? Yes. Kale nodded once. Good. Celeste studied him carefully. You've changed, she said. Kale's lips twitched, not a smile. I've remembered. Before Celeste could ask what that meant, the courtyard gates boomed open. The council entered as 5 ancient vampires whose power pressed against the air like gravity. At their center walked Lord Valethrix, the oldest among them, his eyes pale and unreadable. Your Majesty, Valethrix called, voice smooth. We sensed a disturbance in the castle wards. Kale descended the stairs slowly, deliberately, meeting them at ground level. There is no disturbance, Kale said. Only recognition. The council exchanged glances. Recognition of what? Another counselor asked sharply. Kale's gaze flicked upward, to a high window where a small figure stood watching, golden curls catching the dawnlight. The council followed his eyes. And froze. That child? Valethrix hissed quietly. Why is there a human child in your castle? Kale's voice hardened. She is under my protection. Murmurs rippled. Unacceptable. Dangerous. A violation of ancient law. Valethrix stepped forward, eyes narrowing. That girl should not exist, he said softly. She is the product of forbidden magic. Vivian, standing at the window with Arya, felt the words like a knife. Arya clutched her hand. Mommy, she whispered, they're mad. Vivian swallowed. Yes, she said. But don't be afraid. Because she saw something else now. She saw Kale. And the way he stood. Like a wall. You will not speak of her that way, Kale said calmly. Valethrix smiled thinly. You forget yourself, your majesty. We are the council. We decide what is permitted. Kale's eyes flashed crimson. No, he said. You decide what you permit. I decide what happens in my kingdom. The air crackled. Valethrix lifted one hand. Then we invoked the blood trial. Silence fell. Even the wind seemed to stop. Vivian's heart dropped. No, she whispered. Arya looked up at her. What's a blood trial? Vivian couldn't answer. Because she knew. The blood trial was ancient, older than Kale's crown. A ritual used when the council believed the king had violated vampire law. It allowed them to challenge his authority by targeting what he protected. And Kale had just named his weakness. The child. Kale didn't flinch. On what grounds? He asked. Valethrix's smile widened. On the grounds that this child carries ancient blood magic, he said. Magic that predates the vampire throne. Magic that once chose a king, and nearly destroyed us all. Kale's jaw tightened. So you remember, he said. Valethrix's eyes gleamed. We remember everything. Kale took a step forward, power rolling off him in waves. Then you remember this, Kale said quietly. The last time you tried to kill me, a human saved my life. The council stiffened. Kale's voice rose, echoing through the courtyard. And now her daughter stands in my castle, alive, unafraid, and recognized by magic you no longer control. Vivian's breath caught. Arya stared at Kale with wide eyes. He's talking about us, she whispered. Yes, Vivian said softly. He is. Valethrix's voice dropped, dangerous. You are blinded by sentiment. Kale's gaze burned. No, he said. I am awakened. He turned his head slightly. Bring the child. Vivian's heart lurched. No, she breathed. Please. Guards appeared, but not to seize Arya. They bowed. Arya hesitated, then looked up at her mother. It's okay, Arya said softly. The castle won't let them hurt me. Vivian trembled. How do you know? Arya smiled, a small, knowing smile no 6-year-old should have. Because it knows my name. The doors opened. Arya stepped forward into the courtyard, holding lavender in one hand and her mother's faith in the other. The council recoiled as ancient magic flared, silver runes lighting the stone beneath Arya's feet. Valethrix's face twisted. It's her, he whispered. The air. Kale's voice thundered across the courtyard. This child is under my protection, he declared. If you touch her, you answer to me. Arya looked up at him. Your heart feels scared again, she said gently. Kale froze. Then, slowly he knelt before her. The entire courtyard gasped. A vampire king kneeling to a human child. Arya held out the lavender. Kale took it. And in that moment, the blood trial began to unravel. Because ancient magic does not obey councils. It obeys truth. And the truth was simple. The powerless had been chosen. And the king was no longer alone. The trial of blood and truth. The courtyard did not breathe. It waited. Stone warmed beneath Arya's bare feet as silver runes spread outward in slow, deliberate circles, like the castle itself was waking from a long sleep. Ancient symbols, older than vampire law, older than crowns, etched themselves into the obsidian floor, glowing softly, not with threat, but with recognition. The council stepped back as one. Some in fear. Some in fury. Lord Vaelthrix recovered first. "This is blasphemy," he snarled. "A human child does not command ancient magic." Arya looked at him, tilting her head. "I'm not commanding it," she said simply. "It already knows me." The words landed harder than any spell. Cale remained kneeling, his posture steady, his head bowed, not in submission but in acknowledgement. He felt it now clearly, unmistakably. The same magic. The same warmth. The same pull he had felt the night he almost died. Vivian's knees buckled. She would have fallen if Celeste hadn't caught her. "This isn't possible," Vivian whispered, voice shaking. "I sealed it. I swore I would never let it awaken." Celeste stared at her. "Sealed what?" she whispered. Vivian's eyes never left Arya. "The inheritance," she said faintly. "The covenant." The council turned sharply. Vaelthrix's eyes gleamed. "So you admit it," he said. "The girl carries the blood bond." Vivian lifted her chin, trembling but unbroken. "She carries nothing she didn't inherit by right," Vivian said. "And she never asked for it." Vaelthrix laughed coldly. "Ancient magic doesn't care about innocence," he said. "It cares about balance." Cale rose slowly to his full height, power coiling around him like a living thing. "Then let balance speak," he said. The runes flared brighter. A deep hum rolled through the courtyard, vibrating bone and stone alike. The air thickened, pressing against every vampire present. Guards staggered. Nobles gasped. Even the council felt it, felt their centuries of authority challenged by something far older. A voice echoed. Not loud. Not threatening. Ancient. "Blood may rule kingdoms, but truth chooses kings." The courtyard fell to its knees. Not because Cale commanded it, because the magic did. Arya blinked. "Why is everyone sitting?" she asked. Cale exhaled a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Vaelthrix struggled upright, fury etched into every line of his ancient face. "This trial is not finished," he hissed. "If the child is the heir, then let the truth be proven." He raised his hand, slicing his palm with a claw. Black-red blood dripped onto the stone. "The blood trial demands sacrifice," Vaelthrix declared. "Let the child step forward and speak the ancient tongue." Vivian screamed. "No." She rushed forward, breaking from Celeste's grip. "She doesn't even know what that means." Vivian cried. "She's a child." Cale moved instantly, stepping between them. "She will not be forced," Cale said, voice deadly calm. Vaelthrix sneered. "Then you forfeit," he said. "And the council will take custody of the girl." The word custody sounded like a death sentence. Arya tugged on Cale's sleeve. "It's okay," she said quietly. "Mommy showed me the words." Vivian froze. "No," she whispered. "Arya, no." Arya turned, small hands gripping Vivian's trembling fingers. "You said they were for healing," Arya said softly. "You said they were for saving people." Vivian's eyes filled with tears. "I never meant for you to use them," she sobbed. Arya smiled gently. "But you taught me," she said. "That means I'm not scared." Cale looked down at her, something fierce and protective burning in his chest. "Little one," he said quietly, "you do not owe anyone here anything." Arya looked up at him. "But you protected us," she said. "That means I protect you too." Before anyone could stop her, Arya stepped forward. The runes surged, rising like silver fire around her small form. Vivian collapsed to her knees. "Please," she whispered. "Please don't take her." Arya closed her eyes. And spoke. The ancient language flowed from her lips, not loud, not dramatic, but gentle, like a lullaby remembered from before time. Each word shimmered with soft silver light, wrapping around the courtyard, around Cale, around Vivian. The shadows recoiled. Vaelthrix screamed. The runes beneath his feet burned. Memories exploded through the air, visions of betrayal, of the council conspiring in darkness, of a young prince bleeding on stone while humans were blamed and erased. The truth poured out like floodwater. Cale saw it all. The council had tried to kill him. They had hidden it. They had hunted Vivian because she knew too much. And they had tried to bury the ancient covenant. one that allowed a human-born child to become a bridge between magic and mercy. Arya's voice faded. The courtyard went silent. Veilthrix fell to his knees, clutching his chest. This wasn't meant to happen, he gasped. Cale stepped forward, eyes blazing. No, he said. It was. He turned to the assembled nobles and guards. You have seen the truth, Cale declared. The council violated ancient law. They betrayed their king. And they hunted a human woman for choosing compassion. He looked at Vivian. You saved my life, he said quietly. And paid for it with years of suffering. Vivian wept openly now. I just wanted to protect my child, she whispered. Cale turned back to the council. The blood trial is complete, he said. And it has judged you. The runes shifted, no longer surrounding Arya but encircling the council. Chains of silver light wrapped around Veilthrix and the others, binding their magic, stripping their authority. Gasps echoed. Cale's voice was calm, absolute. You are removed, he said. Stripped of power. Exiled from Nightven. Veilthrix screamed as the chains tightened. You choose a human over your own kind? He spat. Cale's answer was quiet. I choose the future. The council vanished in a burst of blinding light, cast beyond the city's wards, alive but powerless. The runes faded. The courtyard exhaled. Arya swayed. Cale caught her instantly, lifting her into his arms. You did more than anyone should ever ask of you, he said softly. Arya yawned. My head feels sleepy, she murmured. Vivian rushed forward, arms trembling as she reached for her daughter. Cale handed Arya to her without hesitation. Vivian clutched her child, sobbing into her hair. Cale looked around at the gathered vampires. From this day forward, he declared, no human will be punished for compassion. No child will be hunted for ancient blood. And no council will rule from shadows again. The courtyard bowed. Not because they were ordered to. Because they believed him. Cale turned to Vivian. You and your daughter will remain here, he said. Not as servants. Not as prisoners. Vivian swallowed. Then, as what? Cale's gaze softened, for the first time in a century. As family, he said. Vivian stared, stunned. Arya lifted her head sleepily. Does that mean we don't have to be scared anymore? She asked. Cale smiled, not cold, not sharp. Warm. No, he said. It means you never will be again. High above, the storm clouds over Nightven broke apart for the first time in generations. And the kingdom changed forever. The queen who chose mercy. Nightven did not sleep after the council fell. It listened. The city felt it before anyone announced it, before messengers ran through streets, before nobles gathered behind locked doors, before rumors twisted themselves into legend. Something ancient had shifted. Not with violence. Not with conquest. With mercy. High above the city, in a quiet chamber warmed by enchanted hearthlight, Arya slept curled against her mother's side, one small hand still wrapped around the lavender Cale had returned to her. Her breathing was slow and steady now, the soft rhythm of a child who finally felt safe. Vivian watched her chest rise and fall, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. For the first time since Arya was born, Vivian did not feel hunted. She felt held. The chamber door opened without sound. Cale stepped inside, no guards, no crown, no armor, only a dark tunic and the weight of a kingdom settling into his bones. He stopped just inside the doorway as if unsure whether he was allowed this quiet. Vivian noticed immediately. You can come in, she said softly. Cale did. He stood beside the bed, looking down at Arya like she was something fragile and immeasurably powerful at the same time. She is exhausted, Cale said quietly. The ancient magic takes a toll. Vivian nodded. She always gets tired after healing, she whispered. Even when she was a baby. I used to think it was just imagination. Cale's gaze lifted to Vivian. It was never imagination, he said. It was inheritance. Vivian stiffened. I never wanted this for her, she said, voice trembling. I wanted her to have a normal life. To scrape knees. To complain about chores. To grow old. Cale turned fully toward her. And she still can, he said. Vivian looked up sharply. You don't mean that, she said. Not after what she is. Cale's eyes were steady. I mean it because of what she is, he replied. The covenant was never meant to bind a child to a throne. It was meant to ensure that power would never forget compassion. Vivian searched his face. And you? She asked quietly. What does this mean for you? Cale exhaled slowly. For me, he said, it means the kingdom will never be the same. Vivian laughed weakly. That sounds dangerous. Kale's lips curved faintly. It is, he admitted. For those who thrived on cruelty. Silence settled between them, not awkward but heavy with unspoken truth. Finally Vivian spoke. They'll come for her again, she said. Even without the council. Kale nodded. They will, he said. Which is why I will change the law itself. Vivian's breath caught. You can do that? Kale's voice was calm, absolute. I am the law. By midday the great hall filled. Not with celebration, but with reckoning. Vampires of every rank stood shoulder to shoulder, nobles beside guards, scholars beside servants. Humans were there too, maids, messengers, healers, invited openly for the first time in Nightvin's history. Whispers rippled through the crowd as Kale took the throne. But this time he did not sit. He stood. My people, Kale said, voice carrying effortlessly through the hall. Last night ancient magic judged us. Silence fell. For generations we told ourselves that strength came from fear, Kale continued. That order required cruelty. That humans were lesser because they were fragile. Murmurs stirred. Kale's gaze swept the hall. And yet it was a human woman who saved my life, he said. And a human child who exposed the lies that nearly destroyed this kingdom. Gasps echoed. Vivian stood at the side of the hall, Arya asleep in her arms, hidden beneath a simple cloak. She felt every eye turned toward her, and for the first time she did not lower her gaze. Kale raised his hand. From this day forward, he declared, humans are no longer subjects of Nightvin. They are citizens. The hall erupted. Some shouted in outrage. Others in disbelief. A few quietly, in relief. Kale did not pause. No child will be punished for inherited magic, he continued. No healer will be hunted for compassion. And no council will ever again rule from the shadows. He turned slightly, eyes locking onto Vivian. Vivian Solon, he said. Vivian's heart thundered. She stepped forward, knees shaking. Kale descended the steps and stood before her, not above her. You were cast out for choosing mercy, he said. You were hunted for saving a life. He lowered his head. In my name, Kale said, I apologize. The hall froze. A vampire king apologizing to a human woman. Vivian's breath broke. You don't owe me, she began. Yes, Kale interrupted gently. I do. He straightened. And I ask you, he continued, voice steady, to stand with me, not as a servant, not as a symbol, but as a voice. Vivian stared at him. A voice for what? She whispered. For balance, Kale said. For the future. Arya stirred then, blinking awake. She looked around the vast hall, then up at Kale. Are they still scared? She asked sleepily. Kale smiled. Some are, he admitted. Arya nodded thoughtfully. That's okay, she said. Being scared helps people learn to be kind. The hall went silent again. Because no one could argue with that. Kale knelt in front of her. Little one, he said softly, the ancient magic has named you heir, not to my throne but to my promise. Arya frowned. What's a promise? Kale thought for a moment. It's when someone strong chooses to protect instead of rule, he said. Arya considered this. Then I choose mommy, she said firmly. Laughter rippled through the hall, soft, stunned, almost disbelieving. Kale bowed his head. As it should be, he said. He rose and addressed the kingdom one final time. Power without compassion built this city, he said. But compassion will decide whether it survives. He turned back to Vivian and Arya. This kingdom does not need another tyrant, Kale said. It needs a conscience. Vivian hugged Arya closer, tears streaming freely now. Then teach them, Vivian whispered. Kale's eyes softened. I will, he promised. With you. That night, Nightvin glowed differently. Lanterns burned warmer. Streets felt safer. For the first time in living memory, human children played openly beneath vampire towers without fear. And high above the city, in a quiet garden where moonflowers bloomed, Kale watched Arya chase glowing moths while Vivian laughed. Really laughed, for the first time in years. Kale realized something then. The ancient magic had not chosen a ruler. It had chosen a reminder. That the weakest could change the world. That kindness could humble kings. And that true power was knowing when to kneel.